Namaste, everybody. Kerry Steuart here with my brother, Ryan Stanton. And Ryan's just a great friend, been just such an amazing friend over the last, and I don't know the exact date, but I'd say it's been over 4 years. And Ryan and I met on a Angels 14 call, and then he went to a retreat in Kansas City, Warriors Ascent. And we've stayed connected, and we've just grown and overcome challenges and obstacles today. So this is primarily about self-care and a version of self-care that maybe you have not even thought of. And that's why I'm gonna ask him some introspective questions. So Ryan, tell me about like when we first met on Angels 14 call, what that was like for you. I think it was during COVID. Like everybody was on these calls. Like everybody was anxious, like hyper vigilant, all those things. Do you remember those first calls that we got on with those guys and gals?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I wasn't the biggest fan of being, I don't know, the video calls anyways. Because I mean, because I was going, I I was going for my degree at the time, so I was doing a lot of online classes anyways. But, and then I think at that time, because I had a business at the time, and a lot of the um, I don't know, a lot of the groups around town were going to online, networking, which was weird for me. I mean, yeah, okay, I was doing online classes, it was great, but continuing, we're like, okay, we're gonna network online, and it was just bizarre because I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I like person to person kind of stuff, so it was a lot harder for me with that aspect, but yeah, and then I did the Angels 14, which I don't know, like I'm better in like one to one, kind of situations, um, and getting into a situation where there's a lot of people, it's like, how do you respond? How do you really build connection with that? So yeah, I mean, um, it was an interesting experience to say the least at first, and yeah, so got started with that, which was a lot of vets getting to get vets and first responders getting together and I don't know, just having friendly conversations or at least try to. There's sometimes I think it wasn't always friendly, but yeah. um, but I think at that time for me, I would say I was probably very stressed a lot of the times because my business, I was doing pressure washing at the time, and because of COVID and because of some of the things that um, I was experiencing myself, with my PTSD, and um, I had a lot of I don't want to say worries, but I think I worries, I guess, of um, really just figuring out how to be around people, and with people with masks, that kind of stuff. So my brain was just going absolutely nuts, for that time period. So um, yeah, so I was pretty stressed, but I mean, it was nice to kind of get the invitation to the Angels 14 call. At least there was, connection there, and then, obviously, I met you, and just kind of went forward from there. So yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about when you flew into Kansas City, what that was like for you, that experience, and then going
Mhm.
through spending 5 days with me at a retreat. What was that like for you?
Well, I think the first thing to talk about is is really the aspect of getting on a plane. That wasn't really the best for me, because I was afraid of people in masks, so it was really tough, to even the thought of getting on a plane. I remember talking with Tammy about it, and I was telling her I really don't want to get on the plane because I have to wear a mask and I have to see people with masks on, and it was just overwhelming. I mean, to say the least, it was overwhelming because I couldn't be in anywhere vicinity with people, and that even went so as like any single interactions or public interactions was just weird for me. um, to the point where I was going to counseling to be able to talk to people in mass. It was just the hard, it was weird. So anyway, when I got the opportunity to go to Warriors Ascend, um, I had a conversation with Tammy who kind of, I don't know, she kind of, gave me some pep talk, of really, hey, you know what? But you just get on the plane, you come here, you get worked on getting healed, that kind of stuff. Um, so my dad and I actually went up to the airport like a week prior, and we literally sat there in the airport, um, just watching people in mass, and kind of going through the mindset, of what I'm going through, like what am I thinking about, what's what I'm interacting with, that kind of stuff. So anyway, so getting on the plane, eventually the next week I got, get to the airport, and it was tough because I'm just, I'm really trying to talk to the check-in staff, the stewardesses, all these things, and I kind of learned a hack. I literally brought in bags of like peanuts and like snacks, it's whatnot, and I asked the when I was checking in, I had actually asked if I could be, I could go on first. And I made sure of that before before I went to the airport. I'm like, hey, can I get on the list to get into the plane first? Because I want to sit all the way in the back because I never like to sit, in front or anything because I don't like people behind me, right? Um, so you're like, yeah, that's fine. At first it was a little. At first they weren't going to let me, but then I was kind of explaining my situation and like, okay, yeah, it's fine. Um, so I got on the airplane, got into the back, and I had my bag of peanuts and whatever, and I couldn't do mass either, so because it gave anxiety attacks, and so I pretty much was munching like the whole plane flight, so that I had, so I hadn't
I love
have
it because they
the
would
the
take a
mask.
peanut now and then another peanut.
Yeah, I was just like
And then they would take another
slowly.
peanut. I've seen guys like that. Yeah, they were just like eating the whole time, just like one slow peanut. Oh, I'm eating another
Yeah,
peanut. Stand by.
because
Oh,
they're
wait,
just
wait, wait.
wanting to
I got
put.
another one.
Yeah, because they're just wanting you to put, your mask back on, and I'm like, no, this is not happening. I'm just gonna eat, and so it was funny because the stewardess, she saw that, and I was like, is this okay? And they're like, don't worry about it. We think it's stupid having masks on too, and so yeah, so that worked out. And then I got over to Warriors Ascent, and from there had a. I wouldn't say it was probably I don't want to say the best experience. I think there's just some things I definitely experienced there too. So, um, which walking off from one of the classes because um, there was one, oh, I don't remember what the class was. I think it was like the art class or something like that, and the guy was wearing a mask, and um, and I'm like, nope, not doing it, and I just literally walked out. It was just right in the middle of it. So. Um, but yeah, it was challenging for me too.
And we'll ask this
Mhm.
in a few minutes too. But like, I would say like over the last 4 years, like you still kind of suffered with like some low self esteem, some anxiety, maybe a little depression, and like, man, I don't know what I want to do. I'm struggling with my sleep. I'm struggling with my mental health. And I use you as an example all the time because we need to journal more. We need to have more gratitude. But literally, we had a house on the south side of the lake. We were building the other house on the north side of the lake, and you came out and you were helping with the tractor. You help with the insulation. You help with all the sheetrock. You help with all that stuff. And literally, a couple days later, you go, man, I didn't do anything this week. I wish I was just more productive. And I thought you were kidding. I literally thought you were joking with me. And I'm like, yeah, that's a good one. You're like, well, dude, I wish I would have done something. I'm like, you're kidding, right? And you're like, no. I'm like, Dude, do you not remember the tractor? Do you not remember the Mennonites? Do you not remember the sheetrock? Do you not remember the insulation? Like all the things you did. And so what happens is a lot of times we get in this loop of low self-esteem, of self-destruction, of like, I'm not capable of doing things. I haven't done these things. I haven't made the impact that I wanted to do. And that's why I really encourage people to journal, to write down like what you did today, because as you go through the week, life is going to happen and you're going to forget all the positive impacts and all the things that you've done for yourself and other people. So if you're watching this, when this is over, there's one of the tasks I'd love for you to do is just start incorporating a daily journaling, a daily practice of gratitude and those the impact that people have had. And you've had a shift over the last few weeks. Like I talked to you about a week ago, and I kind of wait because I know like when we have something new in our life, at first it's like new and it's exciting, and then after a while that kind of just doesn't have the same luster, the same excitement. And then I've talked to you like a week or two later and you're still excited, and then a week or two and I'm like, wow, this guy's really happy. Like really like consistently over the last few months you've been really really happy and really joyful and really what I call blissful. Like there's just a whole shift in your mindset, in your demeanor, how you approach life, like everything else. Can you tell me like what's been the biggest change um in the last few months?
Well, I think that excuse me, definitely the environment that I've been in. I mean, I would say probably my work. I mean, that's the biggest thing for me. I think going from um, the one job that I had to the one job that I have now. And there's also location too, because we went, well, no, actually, because I was doing the same job here before. So yeah, so it's going from Circle K to working at a hospital. Really, I mean, working in an environment that um, is positive, and um, going from really working by myself to working with a team, which has been a huge change for me because when I was in Texas with Circle K down there, I worked alongside my wife, but I worked with other people in there, um, and for me in that environment, it was a negative. I mean, it was negative. I mean, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of toxic stuff in there, and um, between the leadership, the employees, the I would probably say um, the upper management, how they treated everybody, their policies, that kind of stuff. So it really created kind of a toxic environment to work in. And for me, I think for the longest time, I've been kind of a loner. I think in that aspect of, I kept to myself, and solve problems on my own, whether I had my business or job or whatever. Um, and then my wife and I had gotten the opportunity to work at a campground here in South Dakota. And so we came up here. Didn't work out for me, but it worked out for my wife, which is fine. And then I got to started working at the Circle K again, doing that. And again, it was by myself. It wasn't it was really a negative environment as much as it was in Texas, but still kind of. Um, and then yeah, and then I was just like, I'm still applying to places. I'm still, going. And eventually, I got a phone call um, from for a job at the local hospital here, or yeah, and applied there. Um, Which to me, I totally thought it was a long shot, just because I'd been putting in all kinds of applications anyways. And I felt like I was kind of almost regulated to, okay, I'm going to work at Circle K, I'm going to work maintenance jobs, that kind of stuff for the longest time. But no, yeah, so I had the interview with the guy and, or gal and then a guy. And I had like a really good connection with them, really good interview. Um, and so, yeah, I got into the job and it's nice because, I have a good team to work with, which is really nice, which is really great. Because every day I come to work and I'm, looking forward to work. Well, for the most part, I'm looking forward to going to work. I think the only thing that I'm working on is really, answering phone calls, which is something in itself, but, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I would say just the long story short, it's the environment, the difference in environments for me.
We'll talk about that a little bit more, but like when we first met, like what was your version of self-care, and did you think about like your job as a version of self-care? Did that even enter in your mind that like, oh, what I do with 40 hours of my week, the time that I go there, whatever it is I'm doing or not doing, like how that can really help me mentally, physically, spiritually, and help me with my life? Like, did employment, your employment did you ever like think that that was self-care?
No, I never, it never even entered my mind that work could be self-care. You know, I think before I met you, and went to Warriors Ascent, my idea of self-care, I didn't really have a concept of self-care, because I mean, I did, I did work, I would go to the gym, I would work out. I knew that, for me was, if I was stressed out, I'm going to go work out, and work out some whatever aggression, whatever it needs to be. Like a lot of times my wife would be like, "Hey, I see that you're stressed out. Why don't you go work out?" I'm like, "Okay, I'm going to the gym," and that's what happened. But I didn't have any concept of what self care was, um, and I actually honestly thought it was kind of a weird concept whenever I would hear it. So I wouldn't really like, and I think people beat
Yeah.
this.
Like Carrie keeps telling me I need to get sleep, and Carrie needs to tell me I need to focus on self-care. I'm avoiding both of them.
Yeah, yeah, I would really avoid it. And I remember having, uh, many conversations over the 4 or 5 years we've known each other of, you're talking about sleep, you're talking about, you know, get to bed at one time, wake up at a certain time, and have that consistent. And here am I just, yeah, and I wouldn't have a routine. I was stubborn. Like I literally, I mean, it's funny because I think I'm one of the only, when I wouldn't say one of the only people, but I think maybe a handful of people that came from Warriors Ascent, and also the other, every teaching you do as well, outside of Warriors Ascent was, you know, taking care of yourself. And a lot of times I was super stubborn. Like I was just like, I'm gonna do it on my own. I'm just gonna, and I don't know. A lot of that for me too is, I don't really get into routines very easy. It's just kind of something that has, happened for me over, the over my lifetime, that it's, hard for me to get into routines. And so I tend to be a little bit more stubborn than a lot of other people, are to do those kinds of things. Um, so yeah, so, for my idea of self care wasn't really anything. And then I met you, Kerry, and hearing about it at Where It's Just Sent, and then all the other conversations. I think eventually, yeah, every conversation, and at some point, um, some of that stuff started to click really, and like I said, I'm been pretty stubborn, and I can even tell myself to do something, and sometimes it doesn't happen. It's just because I'm just like, you know, I'm stuck, whatever, right? I'm gonna do what I want. Um, but yeah, so afterwards, just then, at least I knew the concept of self care. At least I had those conversations. But, um, I think it really took, having kind of circling back into the environment itself, um, to really kind of get into, a good, let's say the good job that I'm in now. Um,
Let's talk about that for a minute then. So
mhm,
let's just go back to Circle K. What was that
mhm.
environment like when you showed up to work? What was the environment like with the staff, with the management? Just maybe like a high level, like some of the things the staff did or didn't do, and then what the management did and didn't do, and like how you responded. Like how did you feel going into work, during work, and when you left work? And then we'll do the same thing with now at the hospital. So You show up to work. What's the staff like? What's the management like? How are they treating you and how are they treating each other?
Well, the management loved me. I mean, they knew that I was there because I was kind of an independent contractor working there because the company that I work for contracted um, individuals to work at Circle K to do the jobs, like food service, stocking, cleaning, that kind of stuff. So I ended up being, I got a full time position working there at that particular store. Um, so the management loved me because of the fact that I was a hard worker. I knew what I was doing. I didn't have to have supervision. All that stuff. So in that respect, it was great. But on the other end of it, the environment itself, when I would come in there, it was tough. Um, it was a tough work environment only because, the employees themselves, weren't the greatest, and so a lot of the times the people that they were hiring weren't the best employees, the ones that would come in late, they wouldn't come in, whatever, and I would say, like the main concern there was that the management's hands were tied. They really couldn't get rid of these people. So, you had these individuals that were just um, they were there. You couldn't get rid of them, so they were grumpy. They were frustrated. They were whatever was going on. And so whenever I'd walk into work, it was just you could feel the tension. You could feel the frustration in the air. And so for the most part, I stuck to myself. I really didn't have conversations. And with the conversations I did have, were managers saying, "Hey, you're doing a great job." Other than that, it was just, you know, hearing about the negative stuff that was going on. And, I'd put my headphones in and, yeah, from the staff. I had one gal that I worked with when I was doing the food service part of it. And, and she was a toxic individual. It was this constant, um, I don't know, this constant, she was complaining, about the situation. She was complaining about the management. She was complaining about how she was being treated or how she felt like she was being treated. Um, and so, I had my headphones in, I was really trying to do my work, not really get sucked into, the negativity. Um, and so, yeah, a lot of times there was some disagreements, and, I had to kind of navigate out of that, because I didn't really want to dive into the toxic environment that everybody else was, in. So yeah, I tried to stay on the outside in kind of thing, but it didn't. I mean, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't a perfect situation. So
I mean, it
there's
doesn't
times there
sound like a
were
healthy relationship.
no.
Like, yeah,
Mm-mm.
if you're trying to avoid interaction with your colleagues like that in its complete
Well,
total avoidance,
especially because you've mentioned this many times for me is that boundaries, and no one really respected boundaries as really well. And so this one gal that I was working with food service, um, it was really a boundary issue, because I would say, hey, you know what, um, I'm dealing with sounds all around because I deal with the sound issues all the time, and different sounds and high pitches, all these things, right? And so I have my headphones on so I kind of filter that out and ignore it and whatever. Um, and I'd have this lady, and she would be wanting to talk to me, and I'm like, hey, I got my earphones in, and I take them out. I tell her, I'm trying to keep um, steady, and what I'm doing. Um, I've got 11 hours here a day, and I'm just trying to push through to be able to make money, And it wasn't always. She didn't always get it, and so there was a lot of tension there, and me just walking off because she wouldn't shut up, for lack of a better word, she wouldn't shut up. And so, yeah, and so I can, every day was just tension, stress, worry, and just, I don't know, being constantly on guard, I think, is, which I'm always on guard anyways, but adding more in that situation, um, just brought a lot of stress down for me, a lot more than I wanted it to be.
All right, let's talk about the hospital. What's the work environment not like now? What's the management like? What's the coworkers, the colleagues like? What's the
Okay,
difference
so,
between where you're at today?
well, and this is something that I've had to learn over I think well, a little over 2 months that I've worked there now. Um, so initially it was, I mean, it's always been supportive, but I mean, initially it was like, okay, we had like a training period, and I was working um, at the hospital itself, and we were doing, all our online trainings, that kind of stuff, and the people that we were working with were just, they're very positive. They're always talking to us and saying, "Hey, you know what? You're doing a great job. I'm glad to see you here. That you're on the team, that kind of stuff." Um, when I finally got onto the team that I was going to work with, um, the guy the guy and the gal that I interviewed with were supervisors for my team and the manager for my team, and they they were super supportive and super excited, for the new people. I mean, there was three of us basically, 2 weeks apart. So I had one other gal that I trained with, and all of us, we got pretty close, and the team itself gets pretty close because we're having to ask each other questions and rely on each other and lean on each other. Um, and the management, they're always telling us, you know what, because we have daily meetings, and they're like, hey, you know what, if you ever need anything, just reach out, don't worry about it, if you have a question, just ask. um, and so, yeah, I mean, it's a super supportive environment, and it's honestly, at first, it's weird to me because coming from working by myself, because like even when I was Circle K, I was technically working for myself you know, um, within Circle K. So, I didn't really have a boss. I didn't really have anybody to report to. It was just, I was there doing my job, and then I would leave, you know. And so with the hospital, um, I've really had to learn working with a team again, and and having, if I have a concern, bringing it to somebody, bringing it to my supervisor, which I've made it very clear to him that, it's not always comfortable for me, and not always like, a default for me to want to bring something to him, because I've always been the type of person that I try to solve it on my own. Even when I had, because I have my business, I had to solve things on my own. Um, and so with having a team, and being able to reach out to anybody on the team and ask questions, has been a challenge over the last 2.5 months, because it's foreign to me. It's really is, because um, I I've just gotten in that habit of solving things on my own, really figuring it out. And so, yeah, I've told my supervisor, I'm like, hey, I'm doing my best, and if I don't always reach out, it doesn't mean that I don't want to. It's just something that's, like we have a chat, like, writing in the chat. Um, if we have a question, reach out, and sometimes it just feels awkward doing that. But at the end of the day, um, when I voice my concerns to my supervisor, um, he understands, and because I feel like a lot of, if I'm not reaching out, I'm not that kind of stuff. People are kind of thinking, um, he's not reaching out, he's alone, whatever. What are these things that go through my head? But I've been told that, the no question's a stupid question. It just ask it, and no one's going to judge you because everybody's been in the same boat. I mean, the other people that I'm working with, been there 6 months, 2 years. So we even got the we even got the talk from our manager saying, you know what, it's literally going to take you 6 to 8 months to understand how to do the job. And at some point, you guys are going to be frustrated and you're going to get irritated, and you're going to realize you need to think about the fact that you're not going to be fully in the job knowing exactly what to do at all points of time for 6 to 8 months. And so we've had that over and over again, which is great because um, it's allowed me to be a lot more comfortable with not knowing what I should know to get the job done. I can reach out to anybody. So
Well, that's definitely beneficial. So, what has been like a kind of a difference in the culture and the tradition and maybe even the mannerisms and behaviors of where it was toxic to where it's now so healthy and beneficial? Like, what did some of these other employees or staff or management do before compared to where you're at right now? Like their mindset, their version of taking care of themselves that they probably didn't even realize of what they're creating in their culture, their identity, their label, and their tradition in the hospital compared to the Circle K.
well, for Circle K, I don't think anybody really had a version of self care. Because a lot of the times they were always working there. They were always there. And even when they even when they went home, it wasn't. They didn't really um, know what they needed to do to take care of themselves. Because they've never really had those conversations, with anybody, and knew that, I mean, maybe you shouldn't be smoking, 10 packs a day, that kind of stuff. Or however,
And that's an avoidance, right? If I can go smoke, then I don't have to work. It's delaying this
yeah,
thing. I'm getting paid to smoke. I'm entitled to this. Yeah, I get that.
yeah. I mean, I even had a lady, the lady in the food service was working. She literally took up smoking so that she can have breaks, which I thought was, stupid. Like I was like, why would you want to take up something that, you know, harms your health or is not not good for you to be able to have a break, but for her it was because there was extra stress. She needed a break. She needed an excuse to be able to get out of the building to have a break, which to me doesn't constitute you wanting to work there in that environment, um yeah, so and then go to the hospital. It's
Hospital. What's that culture like? What do they do? Like, I'm sure they take breaks, but they probably aren't. I guess, I'll just make an assumption here. Is their focus patient care? I mean, do you kind of feel that in the culture, like they're there to really care for the community?
well, yeah, I mean, right out the bat, because we had our first um so when I got after I got hired, my first day was they what was it? Yeah, so their class, I think I remember for it was called Start with Heart. Um, and they basically, they would talk to you on, good ways to communicate to your patients, introducing yourself, telling them, on top of my head, I'm trying to remember this, telling them what you're there for to help, what you're there for them, how long it's going to take, and um, really kind of, um, can't think of the word, really let them know, what's going to happen basically. Which is great because, a lot of times you get somebody that comes in any situation that they don't really know what to expect, and so, yeah, so any of the
Well,
that I've
hospitals can
seen,
be
any of the
scary, right?
what,
Yeah. Hospitals are scary. People
yeah,
think they go there to die. They're expensive. This is going to cost them a lot of things out of their lives. So people avoid hospitals a lot of times just because of
oh yeah, I mean,
how they're.
well, we have a lot of people that come in there, and you know they're expecting a negative experience. So, when I was doing the initial training, I was doing patient check-ins, and the conversations I would have with people, you could see some of them were on edge, and I'd be like, hey, and I'm asking questions, just, hey, how's your day going? And this is funny because a lot of times I didn't want to ask them how their day was going because I thought that, you know, okay, they're at a hospital, they're at an appointment, they're not necessarily in the best, mindset, right? And but I got to the point, I said, you know what? People need to be asked how they're doing. They need something connection, right? So a lot of times I was just very forthright and be like, hey, how's it going? And they're like, oh, well, I'm like, I'm here. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? That's a positive, right? You got out of your house, you got here, you're making efforts. And so there's a lot of the things that would happen like that. And then now to what I'm doing now, helping them out, with their financial assistance and all that is mainly what I do. Is really, having those conversations of how can I help you? How can I help you help yourself? Which is funny because a lot of this stuff that you said to me over the years, how can I help you help yourself? Not in so many words, but especially when you're like, so what can I do for you today? And so yeah, so the culture itself is being supportive of each other, patients, and they call us caregivers. We're not employees. We're caregivers. Um, so yeah, so I mean, we're there to care for the patients. So which is great because it puts you in a mindset of, what, I'm coming to work to help people. I mean, that's literally one of the questions I was asked, was, what do you want this job for? What are you looking forward to the job? And I'm like, you know what, I really just want to get back into, because in the military I helped soldiers, right? And I was like, hey, I'm looking forward to wanting to get back into a job, a situation where I can actually help people again, and that's what was sold. That's what sold me. I mean, sold them on me was, oh my God, you want to care for people? Wow. You just want a job that's like $19 an hour. It's just not what, it wasn't the pay. It was the environment that I wanted to work in.
I love that. So you've kind of reframed your perspective of self care. You have to go through what you don't want in life to know what you do want. So you
Mm-hmm.
went through a lot of things in your life of like I didn't want. One of the things I think of too, and I told you years ago, like when you start working like 40 hours a week and you're really enjoying your job, it gives you less time for this negative rumination. Like when you begin to enjoy what you're doing, because like if you don't enjoy it, then it lowers your self-esteem. You don't feel like you're making a difference in people's life. You're not accomplishing your dreams, your visions, and your goals. Or when you're unemployed, you have all this time in the world. And because of that, it lowers your self-esteem. It lowers your confidence. And then you start thinking on the negative thoughts and that begins to loop around. So going back to that part, I mean, I can see that in your life. And so I'm just going to encourage anybody watching this or listening to this that they begin to think about their life of what they're doing as a career as one of the most impactful versions of self-care because now you're impacting the lives of people each and every single day. Truly. You're taking care of these people as they walk into the hospital. You're taking care of them after they leave the hospital. You have a whole different mindset of where you're at. And a lot of it is because of the culture and the tradition. I would say this in closing. Is there anything else you want to discuss or anything else you want to say about self care and how your life has transformed over the last 4 years?
So, as you're talking about the 40 hours thing and really having something that, you know, that you're not thinking negatively, you're not over ruminating, all kinds of, because you're working. There is a difference though, because, with Circle K, I was working 40 hours. Well, actually I was working 55 hours, but, and so the difference between that environment of working, 40 to 50 hours and the environment I'm in now working 40 hours, um, is, is that what I had before at Circle K, the negative environment, toxic environment, whatever, I was literally was ruminating it. I mean, I was coming home, I was talking about it. And Megan and I were talking about it all the time. Um, and with the hospital, um, I'm literally talking about, even when I come home and talk to Megan about stuff, it's about the positive stuff. It's about the funny stuff. I mean, it's not all, you know, there's conversations that I have with patients, that sometimes I talk to Megan about. It's just it's a positive. Like I'm talking about the things that I'm learning, maybe a little bit of the frustrations, but it's not to the point where it's the toxic stuff that I was, keeping in, at Circle K. So, um, at the hospital, it's not that I'm not ruminating on much of negative anymore, because having the team, having the supervisors, having the management, having even the CEO, literally the CEO of the hospital on the Start with Heart meeting was literally there talking to us, telling us thank you for being here. So I mean, it starts from the top all the way down to to me, and so everybody's there to really support each other. I mean, they have parties, they have all kinds of stuff. So um,
So, well, brother, I really appreciate this, man. This was a great conversation. I look forward to having this conversation with you again soon, man. All right.
yeah, yeah, this is great. Thank you so much. Looking forward to more. So.